Coming up, one of the most unique and interactive history teachers you'll ever encounter. With me today is Gerry Nemeth, such a fascinating individual on so many different levels. I don't know where to start with you, Gerry. Tell me a little bit about the classes that you teach at Tri-C's Encore.
Well, my very first class, which is also my favorite class, which I'm about to teach again in this upcoming Encore term, is TV game show history, and it's just what it sounds like. We look at the history of that whole genre, which started for the most part in radio game shows, and then they segued over to the TV side, and we look at the history of the genre, but we don't turn it into a history study for a test type of situation. We look at the history, but then we concentrate on the popular games, Jeopardy, Wheel of Fortune, and so on. We play simulated versions of those games. I've got buzzers and lights for Jeopardy and everything. And the highlight of the class, at least in my mind, oftentimes I will show a clip of one of the TV game shows, and the contestant that's on TV just happens to be from the northeastern Ohio area. And after we watch the clip, I look at the crowd, I pause for a little bit, and I say, would you like to meet the person you just watched on TV? And they're sitting in the back of the room.
So let me get this straight. You're playing a clip from, say, 1972 or whatever of a game show like Jeopardy or Wheel of Fortune or whatever. And this happens to be a local Ohio resident who's on the game show, and you've brought them into the class.
Right, and they look like an Encore student, so they kind of blend in, and they sit in the back, kind of inconspicuous, and then I bring them up front after I introduce them, and the crowd goes wild.
So this is kind of living pop culture history right here in the making. You're just right. What are these people coming in and telling you? What's the inside baseball, the behind the scenes stuff that they talk about?
Well, that's what makes it interesting, because even though you've seen their clip on TV, you don't know what it took to get on. You don't know how many times they took the contestant test. You don't know, what happened backstage. You don't know what happened when they had to cut the film and edit it.
So you don't just sign up or send in a postcard and say, I want to be on your game show. You actually have to qualify.
Well, in the old days, you did that. People would get 50 postcards and send them in and hope for the best. Now everything's online and everything. But the people that have been on truly have a story to tell, and they seem to be the stars of the show. I've never been on a TV game show. I've tried out for Jeopardy, Wheel of Fortune, Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. My problem, like a lot of people, there's about 2 or 3 things I know a lot about, and about 250,000 things I know next to nothing about. The people that do well on Jeopardy are history people, librarians, English people. That seems to be the people that have the kind of mindset that does well. But yeah, that's the TV game show in a nutshell. And I'm doing it twice this upcoming term, once at West at 9 a.m., once at East at 1 p.m.
I'm just the other day, I agree with you that the contestants that generally do the best are people who know a little bit about everything, who like a librarian or whatever, who's read some of the books.
Absolutely. And when you're a history major, not only do you know history, but you know the history of other stuff that is important. And two of the people I brought in, am I allowed to mention the names? I don't know.
Yeah, sure. Okay. Why not?
Matt Kish, he's a history teacher at North Royalton High School. And
so his profession lends itself to him being a good contestant on Jeopardy or whatever.
Absolutely. He won once and lost once. But the history people they know it all, it seems.
It seems like that. Although, just the other day, I saw a clip of Alex Trebek, God rest his soul, on Jeopardy, asking sports questions, and all three contestants, right, when they got to the football clip, right, for $500, for $600, right, they all just sit there like they had no idea how to answer these questions about offsetting penalties or anything. So, I mean, every once in a while you see somebody that seems like they're a know-it-all, but they don't always have.
We all have an Achilles heel, and I have a few. Like I said, if I could pick my 13 categories, I'd be dangerous on Jeopardy. But unfortunately, it's the luck of the draw.
And so when you're doing this class, do you recreate do you come up with your own questions when you have the people playing along with you?
Yeah, when we play simulated versions of the games, I usually create a game that's, Cleveland oriented, Cleveland history, Cleveland politics, Cleveland sports.
Because that's another one of your history classes.
Right. The other class I teach, nice segue, is Cleveland sports history. And so we look at the history of Cleveland sports. We go back to the 48 Indians, which is the last time they won the World Series. We talk about the Miracle of Ridgefield. We talk about the 64 Browns, the NFL champions. And then we do everything else. We play trivia, we look at video, and I bring in retired players.
Wow. So who are some of the guys you...
I brought in Dick Shafraft. He passed away a couple of years ago. He was the best. He drove all the way up from Mansfield, and he just says, Jerry, whenever you need me, call me. I mean, I've been really lucky. Most of the people I approach say, yeah, I'll do it. Gary Collins, who was the most valuable player in the 64 championship game, he calls in. He lives in Maryland, and he calls in pretty much every time I ask him to. So and I usually wear his jersey number 86 that day to kind of foreshadow
awesome.
it. Foreshadowing is an important part of this.
So at some point in the future, maybe we can Zoom him in on a podcast and we can the three of us can have a conversation or something.
I mean, some of these older retirees aren't all that techie, but if we provide the right support, I think we could get something going.
That might be awesome.
Yeah.
Now, in your game show history, do you ever talk about like the controversy, but like behind the $64,000 question?
Right, because that almost killed the genre. In other words, the quiz show scandals.
Set that up a little bit for us. Tell us that history quickly.
Okay. There was no law on the books, no official black and white law that said that TV game shows had to be legit. And as a result, some of the producers, I guess they knew that. And, they were looking at ratings. They were looking at how the audience was responded. And so they started playing loosey-goosey with the rules. And it eventually came down. The word got out. I can't remember the specific game that a couple of them were doing it.
But essentially, they were giving this one contestant the answers.
Right. And then, telling them how to act, rub your brow, look worried. It was really bad. And when the word got out about how they weren't all phony, but when the word got out that some of it was not up on the up and up, it almost killed the genre. And here's how the game of Jeopardy started. The quiz show scandals were 1958, 59, 60. And Merv Griffin and his wife at the time were talking about stuff. And she suggested to her husband, well, why don't you come up with the game? You give people the answers and then see if they come up with the questions.
Because it came out of this controversy, they were giving the answers away.
Right. Let's just give away the answers and try to get the questions. So that's how Jeopardy started. And the working title of Jeopardy was, What's the Question? And then the powers that be said, well, let's come up with a better word. So, at one point, the genre it lost a lot of credibility, but because of the scandals, they put a law on the books, and now it's really, really rigid. It's really rigid. When the contestants are in the green room getting ready to come out, no cell phones, no this, no that. You can't fraternize with your spouse. They've gone to the other extreme now.
Okay.
As far as that's concerned.
Just for no coaching or whatever.
Yeah. It's really, I've read almost every game show book that's out there, and, they say that, I think Ken Jennings had to take his tie clip off once because it reflected and he got close to the answers and the producers had a conniption. And
that's the guy who just a few years ago became the Uber Jeopardy champion.
He won 74 games in a row, and now he's the host of Jeopardy. But he's written several. But he got to quit when you win $2.4 million, you could quit your day job.
Right, and you could find a good investment advisor. There you go. Yeah.
And he's been writing books, and I've read every one of them, and I haven't had him to call in yet. That might be tough. That might be tough to get him to call in.
He's not a local guy.
No. But I actually
he's kind of busy.
Yeah, he's busy. But it's the summer. There's reruns. I don't know when they start taping again. They tape 5 shows a day. Most TV game shows tape 5 shows a day. And you bring extra clothes to change, to give the illusion that you're into a new day.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, what other controversies do you talk about? Were there any other, in either sports or game shows, that there were a controversial win or a controversial call, or?
Let me see here.
Maybe I'm putting you on the spot.
In a way, yeah. I don't think I can come up with that on the fly. Next question.
Gotcha. Well, you've got a unique past yourself. We've talked on other podcasts about lawyers or doctors or people from backgrounds who aren't necessarily teachers who come into Encore. And we were just talking the other day about a guy who was a lawyer, retired, started teaching or started attending the classes at Encore, and then decided he wanted to start teaching classes.
Okay.
And you kind of came at it from the inside of Tri-C. Tell us a little bit about your background.
Yeah, I actually started working at Tri-C in 1997, and I had several different jobs along the way, but my background was on the credit-bearing side. Mathematics and electronics was my so-called day job. And then I would see on Fridays a different set of students floating around. And then I heard that there was this Encore program on Fridays. And in the back of my mind, I thought, you know what? That might not be something bad to do down the road. And then for the life of me, I either saw an ad in the paper or something on the website, because they're always looking for new instructors and new classes. And I said, you know what? I'm going to try. I'm going to put my application in. And again, as I mentioned earlier, the TV game show class was my first class. You look at the existing catalog and you want to find something that's not already being taught. You want to find your own little niche. And I put in for it.
Well, were they all filled up with math and electronics teachers already? Or?
I often thought maybe calculus for seniors, but I don't think I'd get too much of an enrollment there. So that's always the other challenge in Encore. You got to come up with, right now, all 3 of my classes that I've been teaching off and on, they've kind of run their course, and I'm in a position where I got to come up with a new class. I have a following of students that always seem to want to take me, as you do, but I got to come up with a new course or a new twist to keep the enrollment up.
There is plenty of sports history being made all the time.
Yeah, you mentioned that the other day. The class I did teach is Cleveland sports history. Well, how about just Cleveland women's sports history? Encore right now is predominantly women. So if I did a class on women in sports, whether it be local or national, it might fly.
That's something that you bring up, this really interesting point. Like somebody like you, or eventually me, you work till you're 65 or whatever, and then you go, yeah, I'm going to retire. And the last thing on your mind is going back to school. I want to go back to school. Right, and you maybe think about high school and cliques and tests and pressure and grades and all of this other stuff. But what I found, you've been doing it probably longer than I have, at least 12 years or so.
That's about right.
On or off.
Yeah.
And what I find is this is more fun and engaging. Most people are looking forward to Fridays when they can come in and take these classes, because there is no test. There is no quiz per se. Well, in your class, no, there's a quiz. You're putting people on their game show.
But I give away prizes. I give away. I collect TV game show board games. In the old days, if you didn't win the game, your consolation prize was the board game of the game show you were on
that you just failed.
Right, and I collect those, and that's what I usually give away as prizes.
Although that's awesome. Yeah. Well, and in the days before the internet, in case there's any young people listening in on this, in the days before the internet, they had an interactive version of a lot of these games, the home edition.
Right.
Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. The home edition of Jeopardy was pretty low tech, and they had these little clickers. It wasn't electronic buzzers like I have in the classroom. They had these little clickers. And it was low tech, and they had play money and everything, but people loved it. I mean, I'm old enough to remember playing that game, when I was a kid. I got hooked on game shows real young, and I didn't know, I think we're going to bring this up. My initials, my name is Gerard S. Nemeth. That means my initials are what? GSN, as in Game Show Network. So it's interesting that my initials match the TV Game Show Network channel, which is, or at least to start it out, predominantly showing old and new TV game shows. So you might say I was born to teach the class.
There you go. That's awesome. What's your favorite game show? Probably Jeopardy?
Jeopardy. I tend to lean towards the more intellectual ones. Not so much because I worked at a college all along. I just seem to do better with knowledge. A lot of the games are stunt related. If you remember Beat the Clock, you had to do some crazy stunt in 30 seconds. And that's fun as well. But I myself lean towards the intellectual games. But if the students I have, that's the beauty of Encore. You don't even have to follow a syllabus. If everybody in the room wants Beat the Clock, we'll play Beat the Clock.
There you go. Well, there were, though, game shows back there that maybe not to the level of Jeopardy, but where you sort of had to puzzle things out, like What's My Line?
Right.
Or Truth or Consequences.
Yeah.
And talk about those games a little bit.
Yeah. What's My Line? I've Got a Secret, and To Tell the Truth. All three of them had the same approach. And I think they were all Goodson Todman productions. My favorite of the three was What's My Line, for a couple of reasons. And, circling back to what we talked about a few minutes ago, one of my regulars that comes into my TV game show class, her name is Candy Lee Korn. She was on What's My Line in 1959.
You're not making up Candy Corn. You're not making that up.
I'm not making that. That's her name. She was on at age 17, and her line was she was a disc jockey. And back then, female disc jockeys were very rare. And by dumb luck, that episode was saved. Back in the day, they either threw the tapes out or they recorded over them. But the people that did What's My Line, maybe they just had a lot of extra blank tapes around. But most of those What's My Line episodes were saved. So I got a hold. She lives in Broadview Heights. I bring her in. She's 81 years old. She sits in the back. We watch the clip, and then you want to meet her? There she is.
Oh my God! She was a local DJ.
Yeah.
Where was she on?
She was on, I think, an AM station. I think WJW. I'm not sure. When she turned 18, she found a real job. And
gotcha.
but back then that was very unusual. What's My Line were people with unusual jobs or did unusual things, and the celebrity panel, asking yes or no questions had to try to determine it. But yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah.
So you also have a very unique approach to another history class. I got to cheat and look at my notes. Oh yeah. Talk about the Wayback Machine.
Yeah, let's go into the Wayback Machine. That course started under a different title. The title was Amusement Parks of Yesteryear. And we covered Euclid Beach, Chippewa Lake, Geauga Lake, SeaWorld, and then some of the defunct water parks, Dover Lake, Wildwood Lake, and Purity Springs, too. That went down the year I was born. But anyhow, that class went well because everybody remembers going there when they were kids, or maybe they took, that was where they went after prom or something like that. So that class started to fizzle as far as numbers. And I figured, you know what? I still like the idea, but I wanted to beef up and cast a wider net. So that's when I renamed it, Let's Go Into the Wayback Machine.
There you go.
So not only do we cover the amusement parks, we cover stuff like floppy disks, slide rules, 8-track tapes, defunct retail stores, defunct restaurants. So it's a whole, there's a lot more content. So I have a blast doing that. It's I have fun no matter what I do.
One of the jobs I got, like when I'm looking for my real job out of college, and I just needed a quick job, I was working at something called a record store.
Oh yeah.
Which doesn't exist anymore. But what the irony is, I'm working at this record store. There's hardly any records. It's all cassettes and CDs.
Yeah, 8-tracks too. Don't forget about them.
Oh, well, they had to, right? By the time that came around, this was the mid 80s, right? 8-tracks were already gone.
Yeah.
But yeah, and so there's almost an unlimited number of things because you can even start talking about early Mac computers.
Yeah,
or whatever.
We touch on that. I bring in punch cards, paper tape.
Those are all antiques now.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and and we got people in there that worked in IT, and they, when I bring out the punch cards, they start bawling their eyes out because that's how they started and everything.
Right.
Yeah. So it really is. It is fun. I'm glad I was able to see the. That was, again, if I would have just done amusement parks, sooner or later people would have, that class would have fizzled. It's kind of, we talked about this before the tape started rolling. I got to come up with a new class. I mean, I've got a following of people, but I got to come up with a new idea, a new twist, a new angle. But that's fun too. It's trying to keep the whole thing alive.
Well, right. You stretch yourself and then you stretch the class.
Yeah.
And that's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to seeing your classes in the fall. Thanks for being here, Gerry.
Okay. I had a good time. Thanks, Ted.
Bye-bye.
Bye.